March 1, 2024, News Report 1. The funeral of Russian opposition leader Navalny was held on March 1 at the Church of the Intercession of the Holy Virgin in Moscow. Despite the deployment of a large number of riot police and barriers by the Russian government near the church, thousands of Russians still risked attending. Kremlin spokesman Peskov said that any unauthorized gathering would be considered illegal, and participants would be held accountable. At the funeral site, people queued up, stretching from one block to another, slowly walking towards the church with flowers in hand. Many people gathered in front of the church, looking sad. A photo inside the church showed Navalny's coffin open, covered with red and white flowers, with his parents beside it. When the coffin was carried out of the church, people burst into warm applause and cheers, shouting Navalny's name, calling Putin a murderer, and calling for Russia to eventually gain freedom. Not only did thousands of Russians attend, but even ambassadors from Western countries such as the United States and France also came to pay their respects. Navalny, a staunch opponent of Putin, was killed on February 16 at the age of 47. After the funeral, he was buried in the Borisovskoye Cemetery, 2.5 kilometers from the Moscow River. According to the human rights organization OVD-Info, one person was arrested during the funeral, and another 22 were arrested on their way to the funeral. This event shows that the Russian people remain firm and courageous. News Report 2. According to Politico, the UK is preparing to investigate Chinese electric cars, especially brands such as BYD and SAIC's MG, sold in the UK. These Chinese brand electric cars are priced lower in the UK, allegedly because they have received subsidies from the Chinese government, which has made it difficult for UK domestic car manufacturers to compete. UK Secretary of State for Business Badenoch has proposed an investigation into Chinese electric cars, which will be carried out by the UK Trade Remedies Authority. If the investigation confirms that Chinese subsidies distort the market, the UK may take trade remedy measures, such as imposing tariffs. Meanwhile, Italian Minister of Economic Development Warsaw said that Italy is in contact with 3 Chinese automakers, inviting them to set up factories in Italy. Italian Deputy Prime Minister Tajani said that the landing of any Chinese automaker would require approval from the Italian cabinet, and this cooperation would be carefully evaluated. However, Italy's only automaker, Stellantis, has issued a warning, saying that it opposes Chinese companies entering the Italian market because Stellantis vehicles are positioned at a higher end and are concerned about challenges to market share. News Report 3. According to Taiwan's New Talk News website, on March 1, Chinese Coast Guard ship 2130 confronted Taiwan Coast Guard ship Elan in the Taiwan Strait. The Chinese Coast Guard ship tried to pressurize the Elan ship head-to-ship head in the Taiwan Strait west of the Taiwan Strait. Weibo user Chinese Ocean Equipment and official ship information said that Chinese Coast Guard ship 3006 entered the Taiwan Strait from the southern end on the morning of March 1 and appeared in the Taiwan Strait opposite Kinmen at 10 o'clock. The Taiwanese Ministry of National Defense stated that on February 29, a total of 10 PLA fighter jets and 6 warships were only 93 nautical miles away from Taiwan's southernmost point, Olanbai, indicating that China was attempting to blur the Taiwan Strait median line, which could affect the regional situation if not acknowledged. Taiwan's Minister of National Defense Chiu Kuo-cheng stated that the median line of the Taiwan Strait has been a tacit understanding between the two sides for many years, and failure to acknowledge its existence could lead to regional instability. In addition, the Taiwanese Ministry of National Defense confirmed on March 1 that hackers had stolen sensitive information from Chunghwa Telecom, including information from the Armed Forces, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Coast Guard, and were selling it on the dark web. While there was no leak of classified information between the Taiwanese military and Chunghwa Telecom, there was indeed a leak of sensitive information. In recent times, the Chinese government has gradually increased pressure on Taiwan, especially after Lai Ching-te took office, indicating that the Chinese government is not satisfied with its policies. The Taiwanese government expects that the Chinese government will continue to pressure Taiwan until Lai Ching-te's inauguration speech on May 20. The Taiwanese government's stance on the situation is firm, insisting not to yield to political pressure from China. News Report 4. Reuters reported that Australian Minister for Pacific Affairs Conroy said on March 1 that China should not have a seat in the security sector of Pacific Island countries. Kiribati Police Commissioner Artila has stated that since 2020, more than a dozen Chinese police officers have been stationed in Kiribati, rotating every 6 months, participating in community policing and crime database projects. Although Kiribati is only 811 square kilometers in size with a population of only 1.115 million and has no military but only 300 police officers, its geographical location is very important, being only 2,160 kilometers from Honolulu, Hawaii, USA. Australia believes that Pacific Island countries should unite and support each other. Australia has promised to assist Kiribati with the wireless radio network for police and police camps. A spokesperson for the U.S. State Department said on February 26 that the U.S. does not believe that importing security personnel from China will benefit Pacific Island countries. Instead, it will exacerbate regional and international tensions. Australia and the U.S. are engaged in fierce competition with China in the South Pacific region. News Report 5. U.S. Consul General in Hong Kong Mayberry stated in an interview with Bloomberg on February 29 that there is a trend of internet censorship in Hong Kong, which could have serious consequences. She pointed out that considering internet security issues, U.S. company executives visiting Hong Kong would take measures such as using disposable phones and laptops. Mayberry stated that the U.S. hopes to establish better relations with Hong Kong, but this requires Hong Kong to stop restricting freedom. She believes that due to China's suppression of freedom, Hong Kong's status as a global financial center is being affected and its image needs to be improved. Mayberry also mentioned that Hong Kong still has important business advantages, and as long as the Chinese government complies with the Sino-British Joint Declaration, maintaining Hong Kong's high degree of autonomy for 50 years unchanged, relations between Hong Kong and the U.S. will improve. Mayberry, a former journalist, joined the U.S. State Department in 2000 and served as Consul General in Shenyang. She is currently the Consul General in Hong Kong and Macau, and this interview is her first public statement on Hong Kong affairs since taking office. News Report 6. According to reports, the Nikkei stock average broke through its all-time high during midday trading on March 1, reaching 39,990 points, approaching the 40,000-point mark. At the close, the Nikkei stock average was at 39,910 points, up 744 points, a gain of 1.9%, also setting a new all-time high. Over the past year, the Nikkei stock average has risen by 12,394 points, a gain of 45%. Meanwhile, in addition to the Japanese stock market, stock markets in the Asia-Pacific region also showed an upward trend on March 1. Australia's stock market broke through the 8,000-point mark, with the Australia Composite Stock Price Index reaching 8,007 points. The Shanghai Composite Index closed at 3,027 points, up 11 points. The Shenzhen Composite Index closed at 9,434 points, up 104 points, and the Hang Seng Index closed at 16,589 points, up 78 points. News Report 7. On March 1, Zhang Qingsong, Vice President of the People's Bank of China, attended a State Council briefing, stating that the People's Bank of China has instructed major payment institutions to increase the limit for mobile payments by foreigners from $10,000 to $50,000 per transaction. Zhang explained that this measure aims to address the issue of foreigners being unable to make payments in China when their consumption exceeds the limit. As for the rationale behind setting limits on mobile payments for foreigners in China, theoretically speaking, foreign currency does not belong to China's domestic currency. China implements foreign exchange controls to meet the demand for the Chinese yuan, not for foreign exchange demand. Therefore, there isn't much rationale for setting limits on mobile payments for foreigners in China. Additionally, the Chinese government believes that restrictions on mobile payments for foreigners in China have affected the number of foreign tourists, hence raising the limit to encourage more foreign tourists to visit China. However, this notion may not be entirely reasonable because the reluctance of foreigners to visit China is primarily due to safety concerns, not just payment limits. Even if the payment limit is increased, it may not change their travel plans if they perceive China as unsafe. News Report 8. According to DeYoungNet, 1 week after the Spring Festival, the number of companies on Zhaopin, a job recruitment platform, increased by 45%. Among them, the growth in positions related to tourism and vacation was the highest, followed by warehousing, transportation, medical beauty, and other fields. In the Guangdong market, job seekers are mostly in Dongguan, accounting for 55%, followed by Foshan at 40%, and Guangzhou the least at 19%. However, it's worth noting that the data from job recruitment websites may not be entirely accurate, as some companies may post false recruitment information, including salary and the number of positions, sometimes only to project a certain market stance, rather than reflecting the actual situation. News Report 9. Assistant Foreign Minister of the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Miao Deyu, and Director of the Policy Planning Staff of the U.S. State Department, Ahmed, held consultations on China-U.S. foreign policies in Shanghai on February 27. The two sides exchanged views on their respective foreign policies, international situations, and regional issues. Recently, China and the United States have been in frequent communication, which has been candid and constructive each time but lacking substantive content. This is because both sides have basically reached a consensus to maintain contact without conceding, so there isn't much substantive content to discuss. The Biden administration needs to convey a signal to investors that it is still communicating with China and will not engage in a war. The Chinese government hopes to establish a positive image of its relations with the United States domestically. Therefore, both sides are putting on a show of goodwill in public to demonstrate that their relationship is positive. Additionally, according to Xinhua News Agency, Lu Jianchao, Minister of the International Department of the CPC Central Committee, met with a visiting delegation from the American Chamber of Commerce in Beijing on February 29. Both sides believe it is necessary to further strengthen mutually beneficial cooperation through dialogue and communication to promote the stable development of China-U.S. relations. This meeting took place shortly after the delegation met with Premier Li Keqiang on the 28th, raising some questions. According to convention, meetings are usually chaired by higher-ranking officials, so Lu Jianchao's meeting may imply that he has important arrangements during the two sessions, which is highly likely. News Report 10. According to Xinhua News Agency, the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference will convene in Beijing on March 4. The agenda of the conference includes a work report of the CPPCC, attendance at the NPC session, and the submission of policy recommendations. CPPCC spokesperson Lu Jie will hold a press conference on the afternoon of March 3. Previously, the CPPCC meeting usually convened on March 3, followed by the NPC session on March 5. Recently, some netizens pointed out that the CPPCC meeting was rescheduled to March 4, which contradicts my previous report, and for this, I deeply apologize. After verifying with colleagues, it is indeed the case since 2021 that the CPPCC meeting has been rescheduled to March 4, while the NPC session remains scheduled for March 5. Typically, there is a one-day gap between the NPC and CPPCC meetings to allow for preparatory sessions. News Report 11. According to Reuters, the second villa owned by Su Jiayin, chairman of Evergrande Group, is now listed for sale in Hong Kong. This villa is located on the Peak in Hong Kong, with the address being number 10E, Braga Circuit. The villa has 3 floors, 4 gardens, and an internal elevator, with a total area of 493 square meters. It is priced at 500 million Hong Kong dollars, with a deadline for offers set on April 22. Su Jiayin purchased this property in earlier years, and among the properties he owns, one of them is number 10E, Braga Circuit. After Evergrande encountered financial difficulties in 2021, Su Jiayin mortgaged one of the villas to repay debts. In March of last year, China Construction Bank took over one of the villas, but it was not successfully sold, and is now reduced in price to 500 million Hong Kong dollars. The other two villas were mortgaged to Orient Financial Group, which took over these two villas and listed them for sale. After the special stamp duty control measures were lifted, non-long-term residents of Hong Kong can also purchase these villas, enjoying the same purchase conditions as Hong Kong residents. Su Jiayin's mansion is located on the Peak in Hong Kong, alongside other wealthy individuals. On January 29, the Hong Kong High Court issued a bankruptcy order for Evergrande and appointed a liquidator. Financial institutions have begun selling these seized properties at the beginning of the bankruptcy proceedings.